Hello, hello. I would have done this last year, but and it's funny to say last year because that was like 2 days ago. However, I got very sick in the last week of December when I normally would have done this, and I wasn't able to do it. But we're doing it now, and there's a fire truck outside my house, and my bed hasn't been made, so I'm gonna take care of that real quickly right now. I kind of want to keep the window open. Oh, it's all good over there, big dog. Seeing that, so I'm gonna close the blinds. Seeing that sort of thing, it's kind of a double-edged sword, you know. Like it really sucks that someone's going through a tough time, but I think it's also great that we live in a society where if somebody's having an emergency, there are, uh, you know, things that we can do to help with that. I guess I don't know. There's people we can call to help us, and we don't have to like suffer. Let me get some smooth jazz to put in the background. Hold up. Let's see. Wait, chill vibes. Music. Lo-fi hip-hop beats. Here, let me know if that's too loud or if you can't hear it. Let's see. Just watched Meet the Robinsons 3D on my projector last night. Yeah. Meet the Robinsons is a great movie. There we go. Here, let me pull it down for you guys. Hold up. Got it right here. This is a really good one. This was Phil's second 3D movie. Yeah, he did Chicken Little and then he did this one. And Meet the Robinsons was designed for 3D a lot sooner than Chicken Little was, so the 3D's a lot better, I think, in that movie. Let's see. Let me pull up B and pull this out. I have my list of movies here. We're gonna start from the beginning of the year. Now, I might not have seen every 3D movie that came out this year, so just keep that in mind. Isn't it wild to think that DreamWorks released two movies this year? Like, that's crazy. Let me add a source. I'm very nasally right now. I mean, I'm not like sick, but it's like still kind of like that. Enter Chrome. And this is also on my new PC. The search bad guy. No. Alrighty, here we go. Let's see, I had about 100 3D Blu-ray movies. I got like, what, 200, 300 on the shelf over here. Let's see. Underrated masterpiece, totally. Chicken Little, not so much. Here in Australia, 3D is non-existent. Really? Damn, I'm sorry to hear that. At least you guys got Avatar, and we'll be talking about that much later on in this. But the bad guys, DreamWorks has been going hard on the. Hold up, I gotta be careful too, because it's probably some sus. DreamWorks has been going hard on the stylized animation this year, and the bad guys is no exception to this. And I think it's really cool that we can get this stylized animation and have the 3D be in there. I don't remember the 3D too much in this one. Because it was so long ago. December, this trailer came out in December of 2021. I don't think the 3D was necessarily bad. It was just kind of like there. I don't remember any standout moments in the 3D presentation, at least. There might have been a few moments where they're driving really, really fast and it's like intense. Let me see if they have the shot in the trailer. DreamWorks said this was gonna be like the Shrek of heist movies. I can't find the shot. Maybe it's in another trailer. The bad guys. Oh, let's take a look at this. Maybe I can find it here. I hope I don't get striked for this. Alright, so when you have shots like this, where it gets really close. Yeah, this right there. And he gets close and he gets up in the camera. This stuff in 3D is good for 3D. It's just really interesting that they were able to take such a stylized thing and make it work. My microphone's having a difficult time staying connected to my desk at the moment, so I'm working on that. I'm trying to keep it up there. For Shrek. Hello, Dead Lighthouse. Good to see you. Hello, everyone. Let's see, I've not heard of the bad guys. Yeah, this movie kind of... I wouldn't say it flew under the radar, but we were still, like, in Omicron COVID territory at that point. It was decent. It was a decent movie, and the 3D was just kind of there. And I think when it comes to 3D, you don't really... Like, when I say it's just kind of there, I don't know. It's like 3D is the icing on the cake, I guess. And you want your icing to help complement the rest of the cake, but when it's just kind of there to have it, you're not really getting much out of that. Jurassic World Dominion. This movie actually did a lot of business. Hold up. Big summer release. It's Jurassic World Dominion 6 hours. This movie was another one where the 3D was just kind of okay. They did something really weird. So at the very beginning of the movie, there's like this online news content farm that has like a video they made about all the dinosaurs that escaped into the real world. And for some reason, that sequence is presented in 3D, which doesn't make any sense because if you were watching this on the internet, it wouldn't be in 3D. And the 3D wasn't even really all that good in this movie anyway. It was just another one of those movies where the 3D is just kind of there. They just put the 3D skin, the filter over it to just have it be there, and they didn't really do much with it. Even though this got it... Wait, am I... No, Doctor Strange came out before this. I thought I had, Okay, hold up. We gotta go back a little bit. We'll get back to Jurassic World. Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness. This movie was really good in 3D. I remember there being a lot of hype around the 3D before this movie came out, and I know a lot of that was due to Avatar: The Way of Water. And this is where they were going to be premiering the trailer, so James Cameron really wanted this movie to get an IMAX 3D release. You have to remember, a lot of movies, especially I think like Marvel ones, weren't getting IMAX 3D releases. It was just IMAX 2D, and then it would get like a Realty 3D release like along with it. So I would always have to choose between the IMAX or the Realty 3D, which I always went for the 3D release. But when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness came out, that was the first one that in a while that had been in IMAX 3D. And I have to say, it was a good return to form. There was a lot of thought and effort put into it, and it's interesting because Spider-Man 4, which was going to be directed by Sam Raimi, who directed this movie, was going to be shot in 3D. And I always thought it was a shame that we never got to see Sam Raimi do a 3D movie, because I feel like he'd be really good for that. But we finally got to see it here, and it definitely proves my theory that he is really good for 3D. This movie has a lot of deep moments. Horror itself just lends itself to 3D very, very well. Let me see if I can pull up a trailer. The Random Space Media did re-release, or they did release Jurassic World Dominion in 3D. However, I don't really like that movie. I don't think it's a very good Jurassic World movie, or Jurassic Park movie, and I don't think it's a good movie in general. It would be cool to get the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies in 3D, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Doctor Strange in 3D, the original Doctor Strange, was absolutely astounding. I saw that one in IMAX 3D. Here. The only way for me to get the 3D version was to get the Steelbook. Cool. There we go. It's a cool Steelbook. I don't really care about getting Steelbooks, but look at that disc art. So cool. Thank you, Marvel. The sequence in the first Doctor Strange where he gets thrown out of his body for the first time and he goes across the multiverse, that in IMAX 3D was absolutely mind-bending. Like, that movie had amazing 3D, and I'm happy to say that they followed up with this movie and also did some pretty amazing 3D stuff. You have all these creatures, you have all these monsters, you have all these different world-bending things, you have, you know, stuff like this. Yeah, my headset's beeping at me, so I gotta charge it. The 3D was very well utilized. There was a lot of cinematography and shots that felt tailor-made for 3D. This story in general just works really well. A trip across the multiverse. You have a witch that can cast all these spells and take control of people and summon demons. It's just a really good idea for 3D, especially even though it doesn't last very long. The sequences where they're jumping through the different multiverses were really, really deep as well. They were intense. They're supposed to be intense. The music fight between both Doctor Stranges was really, really cool in 3D. The music notes were literally flying off the screen, which is what you want. These notes are flying off of the pages of the film sheets, and when they fly off the film sheets, they fly out of the movie as well. Let me see if I can find it. There's something else that I do vividly remember being very well done in 3D. Yeah, look at all these shots there you zoom up. Alright, so this stuff right here, the demon stuff. The demons in 3D were really, really cool. And I remember a shot specifically that takes place inside this room right here, where he's summoning the demons for the first time, and they're flying everywhere and they're going all which way, and he has to reel them back in. He has to pull them back into himself, and the demons are like literally escaping the screen. They're flying, you know, coming up out of the screen, and he has to pull them back in. And I think, especially for a multiversal story, to have creatures that are trying to not only escape the character and the room, but escape the screen into the audience, and to have the character pull them back in, really works on not just a cool 3D spectacle, but just on a meta level as well. I really hope that did this get a 3D Blu-ray release? Let me look it up. I actually would really like to get this one in 3D. Let's see. There's no shot. This is a freaking 3D Blu-ray. This is a scam. This is 4K and 3D Blu-ray. Japanese only. How much is 5,800 yen? $44. I don't even know if it would play in my Blu-ray player. This is one Random Space Media should do, because Disney was releasing the Marvel stuff in 3D on Blu-ray with the red swoop. You guys know what I'm talking about? Hold up, let's see. Okay, maybe Infinity War didn't get a 3D Blu-ray release. Weird. Okay, well they were releasing it and then they just didn't. It's from it cost $70. A free guy on 3D Blu-ray would be fantastic. I hate the fact that Japan is region 8. I hate the fact that No Way Home was an internet. You couldn't play it on whatever Blu-ray player I had. It's like, why? Why do movies have to be region locked? Like, I don't understand that. Just like have it be region free. It's possible. I know it's to combat piracy, but still, it's not convenient at all. Doing that only increases piracy because you've made it more difficult for people to get legitimate copies of your movie. You haven't stopped the problem, you just made it worse. But Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I would say one of the better 3D movies that came out this year. Easily. I would say top 3. Alright, now we're talking about Jurassic World Dominion. Go back. Jurassic World Dominion, not a very good movie. It was just... And the 3D and IMAX 3D presentation, while I appreciated it getting an IMAX 3D release, just wasn't interesting. Honestly, everyone's already forgotten this movie exists, and it only came out like 6 months ago. And I think it's going to stay that way. But it's okay, because we got this. This right here, this is the only Jurassic Park thing you need. The first Jurassic Park in 3D. It's a great 3D conversion. Very clean. The movie holds up extremely well in 3D. There's a lot of pop-outs. There's a lot of deep shots. It's a very engaging 3D movie. And they did an excellent job. It was a good choice for a conversion. And I think, and we're going to be getting into this later, I think Spielberg just shoots well. And his cinematography is so good that it just works extremely well in 3D. I said this during the Jaws 3D review, but I'm like, if the cinematography is good, then the 3D will be good as well. It goes hand in hand. I do not think that James Cameron will allow that to happen. I think James Cameron's gonna make it so that Avatar 2 gets a regular 3D Blu-ray release. And if he has to compromise, it'll probably be a 4K 3D combo pack. We'll be talking about Avatar 2 very soon, though, because I have a lot to say about it. Let's talk about Lightyear. So, Lightyear is an interesting release. This was Pixar's first theatrical release since Onward, which I saw in 3D. I thought the 3D in this movie, while this movie wasn't very good at all, I thought the 3D was very, very good. The 3D was very strong, Buzz Astral. The 3D was very strong, it was very deep, and this movie's story kind of lends itself well to 3D. You have all these massive ships, they're out on this, crazy alien planet with all these vines. It's just a very sharp looking movie, and the 3D works with it very, very well. Especially when you have scenes where Buzz, punches it in his, spaceship. Or you have scenes like this where Zurg is holding the gun to your head. It works very well. Let me see if I can find the, what I'm specifically... So you have shots like this. Because shot composition also goes a long way in making a good 3D experience. Like, you have shots like this where you're looking down this ramp. and it has the pole on the front, and the ship is angular. Just don't ask James for a copy. I would love to get Jaws on 3D Blu-ray. Was it a conversion or did they render it like that? Because Luca also got a 3D version. They just never released it. And that was one I was like, I would definitely love to get this in 3D. But yeah, you have shots like this where the camera gets stretched, the field of view gets stretched, and the 3D just works really well for that sort of thing. It helps elevate or it helps push the extremity of having the image be stretched. Zoom. Lots of beautiful space shots. While this movie was bad and I'll probably never watch it again, I would say that the 3D in this movie was very well done. I thought it was cool that there were sequences that were rendered for IMAX specifically for like full frame. I never saw this in IMAX because I didn't like this movie. I saw it one time in 3D 40X and that was it. I was like, alright, I'm good. But yeah, honestly, this would probably be in the top 5. As far as specifically the 3D is concerned, top 5 3D movies that came out this year. Maybe. We haven't gotten through the whole list yet. And the next thing on the list is Minions Rise of Gru. What a movie. I saw this in 3D 40X. Illumination always does great on their 3D. I don't think anybody's going to argue that. They definitely put a lot of depth and volume into their movies. Of course, they know they're movies that are primarily watched by children. And children love big 3D spectacle. I also like how there's a Jaws poster in the background, and Jaws also got a 3D re-release this year. It's a fun little thing. By the way, I think Universal owns the rights to Jaws, so this is like a fun little nod to the fact that they ended up re-releasing it. Even though I think it was unintentional, it was purely like a coincidence, it was still, you know, fun. Australia actually saw the Grinch in 3D. The Grinch is good in 3D, however, there are, at least the 3D Blu-ray release, at least the one that I have, there are a few issues with the 3D. There's like, I can think of 3 shots off the top of my head where one of the images was not rendered properly in 3D. Like their field of view was not, or the background in some of the shots is blurred, right? But in some of the shots, only the left eye will be blurred and the right eye won't, so there's a weird disconnect. And there's another shot where the left and right images are just simply reversed. And I have no idea how that happens. They didn't, it was an issue when it released in theaters and they didn't fix it for the home release. And that's really embarrassing. I thought the 3D in this movie was fine. You know, it's Illumination. They got their good 3D shots. You're really just there for the ride. They don't have it here, but there's a shot specifically when they use this rocket thing here where the flames come out. That stuff in 3D looks really nice. But you have the exaggerated shots like this. Like that work well in 3D. Just an overall decent 3D release. I don't really have too much to say about this movie. Including our next one, Thor, Love and Thunder. Thor, Love and Thunder was also not a very good movie. And I don't really remember seeing anything in the 3D that really stood out to me. This feels like another movie where the 3D was just like a requirement just because that's the way it's got to be. But they didn't really do anything fun with it. And when you're talking about a character like Thor, where you could do a lot of fun stuff with the 3D, it's just really disappointing. I thought Thor Ragnarok's 3D was extremely well done. But Thor Love and Thunder, not so much. Of course, it's been a while since I saw it, but I even when I came out with that review, I was like, this movie just really isn't good. The 3D isn't really engaging. It's just kind of a meh movie. And I believe I saw this one in IMAX 3D. It's another one you could probably just skip out on. It's nothing to write home about. You have Gore the God Butcher. You could do stuff with his axe, you know, throwing his axe around, throwing Mjolnir around, but they don't do anything with that. It's just kind of like, whatever, you know. We're just making the movie to make it. The conversions are very clean, but I just don't even really particularly remember the 3D being very deep. The cinematography isn't particularly exciting, and it's just an overall meh experience. It's not even like with Black Widow where the 3D was really deep, but the story didn't really feel like it did much with the 3D. The 3D wasn't super deep, and there really wasn't much done with it, so yeah, nothing more to say about Thor Love and Thunder. Just a pretty forgettable movie. Ah, here we go. Jaws. Jaws 1975. It was such a strange year. We had so many 3D re-releases this year. It was nuts. We got Jaws, Avatar, Dawn of the Dead, all within the same 2 months. This movie in 3D was absolutely fantastic. A perfect conversion, a great movie. The cinematography just worked so well for 3D. The end fight sequence was great. It just worked so well. And there's definitely some pop-out moments in this movie. And, you know, different shots. Let me see if I can pull up the Jaws trailer. Let's see if I can find any shots. Ooh, this is a crusty trailer. I ain't even gonna lie. Even though, and when I heard that they were re-releasing this one in 3D, I was kind of like, I'll see it, but I'm not like the biggest fan of this movie. But after seeing it in 3D, I was on a theater screen. I was like, hell yeah, this movie is great. The 3D actually was very well utilized. I was surprised how well the 3D worked in this movie. I was genuinely shocked at how good of a choice this was. It ended up being. Even though there are other movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark or even The Last Crusade, which I would have probably preferred to get a 3D re-release, but they couldn't do that because it's owned by Disney now, that's right. And Disney put a can on the Star Wars 3D re-releases. Even though Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith were finished, their 3D conversions were done, Disney didn't release them. They were shown at Star Wars fan conventions. And that they were shown at the Star Wars celebrations, and that was it. But they never released them outside of that. The whole ending sequence with the shark was really cool in 3D. I can't really find any of the shots that wowed me, or just the movie, the cinematography in general just worked. When you're like looking over his shoulder and he's high up here on the mast, you really feel how high up he is. You really feel the intensity of everything. You feel him coming up at you. It genuinely was just extraordinary, and I ate my own words, man, with this one. I was talking shit. I was like, yeah, I don't know if it's gonna be a good choice for 3D, and I don't think it's gonna be that good. but it ended up really surprising me. And this is actually a movie that I would buy like day one if it got a 3D Blu-ray release. There'd be no hesitation, no question about it. I would buy it. Let's see. It's like Marvel seeing the artwork. Okay. If your screen was correct, didn't it say it was still playing in 3D in your area? Yeah, but the do an upscale to IMAX 3D is like a whole different thing, so I understand why they didn't do that. You have to keep in mind that they're trying to maximize their budget for the or the amount of money they can get from this. I wouldn't be surprised if this movie had been converted several years ago, just like Dawn of the Dead, and just didn't get a 3D release until now. Because Dawn of the Dead was done back in like 2013 and it didn't get a release up until recently. And that was simply because there just wasn't anything to release. There was like no big movies coming out. And they said, screw it, this is a good time to release it because there's no, no competition. And let's just go for it. And I think it ended up paying off really well. I'm very glad that I ended up seeing this movie in 3D. But before we can get to another re-release, we gotta talk about Brashmastra. So this movie was so 3D is actually really big. Let me turn down my headset. 3D is really big in India. Really big. In fact, a lot of Hindi movies get released in 3D. Like RRR, which blew up in the United States, got a 3D release in India, and I kind of wish I could see that movie in 3D, but I don't think that's going to end up happening. But this movie right here, Brashmastra, which is it's kind of like the movie, they're basically taking Indian, from what I understand, myths and legends and creating a Marvel-style trilogy around it. The Astraverse. And it got an IMAX 3D release, which is what I was like, oh, okay. And I saw this in IMAX 3D opening night. I absolutely loved the 3D in this movie. The 3D in Brashmastra was so well done that I couldn't tell if it was converted or if it was shot that way. The action sequences worked well for 3D. The opening exposition sequence was freaking crazy. Let's see. Opening. Is this? Yeah, this is not the opening sequence. That is just a trailer. I can't find it, but when they're doing the big exposition dump at the beginning, the 3D was just very, very deep there, and it continues throughout the movie. There's a lot of pop-outs, especially during the fight scenes, especially during the climactic fight scenes with the fire. This movie utilizes 3D very well. It integrates it very well with the story. It knows what it is, and it wants to include the 3D as much as it can to give the audience an exciting spectacle, and that's exactly what it does. This movie was not only very engaging and entertaining, and I had a fucking blast the whole way through. I'm looking forward to the next ones, and I hope those get 3D get 3D releases as well, because I think that this honestly should be what studios should be looking at when you're coming up with 3D releases. You know, there is a way to make a very well-made, entertaining movie and marry it with good 3D. It's possible. It takes more effort, but you can do it. I remember when this movie came out, there was a lot of people that specifically wanted to see the 3D version of it. And I don't blame them. It was just very, very good. Even our theater got this movie in 3D. I was very impressed. This was my first Hindi movie. I think it was a great introduction to it. I wish more people could have talked about this one. RRR kind of took over the conversation, and it's a very good movie. I haven't seen it, but from what I hear, it's very, very good. But this one, the 3D, this is one I wouldn't actually mind getting on 3D Blu-ray. Star Wars 3D. They missed the 45th anniversary in 2022. Kind of wanted to see this one, but the nearest theater in this film was like an eternity away. Yeah, that's a shame. But it was definitely well worth the 3D experience. I would say this is definitely top 5. Here it comes. This is it. This is the big one, boys. This is the one I said I was never going to do a 3D review for. Avatar re-release. So, Avatar. What can be said about it? You know, it is what set the standard for 3D in 2009. When it came out, studios saw that and they were like, we got to do this. We got to jump on this right now. James Cameron came out. He like speed ran learning the language of 3D, and he was like, okay, this is what you can do with it. And it even 3D got better even after this movie came out. And like I said, we'll talk about Avatar: Way of Water in a bit. But even today, I think that 3D is still pretty good in this movie. Although you can tell that, especially with what would follow as far as 3D releases are concerned, you can tell that they were still learning the language. And I think nothing highlights that more than Avatar: The Way of Water, which just absolutely blows the 3D in this movie, well, out of the water. No pun intended. But it was actually a huge surprise to see that not only did this get re-released, it got an IMAX 3D re-release, which is very rare these days. We just talked about Jaws getting a 3D re-release, but not in IMAX 3D. And now we have Avatar in IMAX 3D, which was only supposed to be released for 2 weeks. We ended up having this movie for 4 weeks in 3D. Because well, first off, people thought this was the sequel. People thought this was Avatar 2. And we had to keep explaining, no, this is the original movie that got re-released. But I think people just really liked this movie. And because of the re-release, it ended up pushing it over the edge to become the highest grossing movie of all time. But the 3D IMAX presentation was still extraordinary. I wish I could have seen it in a true IMAX, but I'll take the Regal IMAX, you know. It's the next best thing, I suppose. And I'm glad that I actually got a chance to see it in IMAX 3D. I think it might have been possible that I saw this in IMAX 3D way back in the day. I don't really remember. 2009 was like over 10 years ago, and I was... How old was I in 2009? Let's see. I was like 14 when this movie came out. Right? I want to say I was like 14. No, I was 13 when this movie came out. I remember the hype around it, but I don't remember the IMAX 3D experience. So it was great to be able to get a refresher, even though I have the 3D Blu-ray right over here on the shelf. Wait, where did it go? Oh, there it is, right there, James Cameron's Avatar. What can I say? The 3D still holds up pretty well. I think that there are other movies that use 3D better and is more interesting in 3D, but I think this movie did a lot to help show what 3D can do and to help learn a lot of the 3D and go through the teething issues. This movie basically walked so that all the other 3D movies could run. They created the beam splitter rigs that are widely used for 3D filmmaking. They, you know, conversion technology, the motion capture technology. It pushed technical stuff in filmmaking. It pushed it like 10 years forward from this one movie. And it wasn't even until recently, with like stuff like Infinity War, did we finally get to visual effects that come close to how good this movie looks. This movie still holds up, for the most part, visually, very, very well to this day. The Na'vi effects still look very good, and you didn't even think they could improve it until Avatar 2 came out, and then you were like, wow, I didn't even think this could even look better, but here it is. Hello, Buzz Lightyear fan. 2004 is back. Well, the good thing about it is we didn't have to dream about this movie getting an IMAX 3D release. It did. It got it. It was also great marketing for Avatar 2 because they actually showed a clip of Avatar 2 at the end of this movie. Let's be moving on though. Dawn of the Dead. This movie came out of nowhere. When I saw they were advertising this, I was like, this is a weird oddity. This is such a random thing to re-release in 3D. Like, I was glad we were getting 3D re-releases. It was actually really shocking to me that studios cared enough about 3D to re-release these movies in 3D. And I can honestly say that even though I don't think this movie was a good pick for 3D, because a lot of it's just people hanging out in the mall, it was a very well done conversion. And I think the 3D helped with the intensity of it. There are a few shots like this, where the 3D worked very well. However, it wouldn't have been my first choice for a 3D re-release. Look at that. These were both Regal exclusives, by the way. And much like with Avatar, Dawn of the Dead did so well in 3D that they actually extended its release window by a week. It was like either a week or 2 weeks. So clearly people don't mind 3D and there's still a market for it. As long as the movie's good. And it really sucks that all these screenings are so far away from you. So I was happy I got a chance to see this, and I do recommend it to people. I don't think this is ever getting a 3D Blu-ray release, but I was glad I got to see it when I did. Oh, wait, what? I guess this did get a 3D release. If this isn't a lie, maybe you can get this movie on 3D Blu-ray. But it's German. This one. Never ever watch this movie. Not even in 3D. Oh my gosh. I have a video on that one. It's absolutely atrocious. Wait, did this really? No, this is only the 3. It's only in Japan, Germany, right? Did this actually? Huh. I don't know. Maybe this might be one to look at getting in 3D on 3D Blu-ray. It won't be at the top of my list, but it's definitely on it. Oh, Wakanda Forever came out before Strange World. Wakanda Forever. This is a movie that on second watch, I actually appreciated the 3D a little bit more. There were a lot of deep shots, especially when the characters are up flying or when they're under the water. The conversion was very clean, and that's more or less all I really have to say about the 3D for this movie. This movie was very good. I think it fixed the tonal issue that the MCU was having, and it was just a very raw, personal, emotional story, and it worked very well. The 3D this movie does also feel like it is a good fit for 3D. The underwater sequences, one of the characters can fly. You have all these this fantastical city of Talokan and the fantastical city of Wakanda itself that lends itself well to 3D. And I know a lot of people say that the original Black Panther was an excellent 3D release. And I vaguely remember seeing that movie in 3D, but it was a long time ago. But this movie got an IMAX 3D release. Saw it in IMAX 3D. Saw it in 3D 40X. Good stuff. but it wouldn't be on the top of my list for best 3D movies this year. It's another movie that has the 3D, and sometimes they do interesting things with it. There's like one or two shots, but outside of that, it's just kind of there, and it's there to help complement the story more or less. I wish studios would. I wish they would allow the stereographers to mess with depth more. To have like it's probably there, but it's a lot harder to tell. Like in Coraline, you can easily tell when the 3D is very deep versus when it's very shallow, and I think they might still do that in these movies, but it's a lot harder to tell when they're doing it. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, worth seeing in 3D. I thought it was a great experience. Let's talk about Strange World, but not for very long. Strange World wasn't really that good. Strange World was poorly marketed. Disney clearly wanted it to fail. It just wasn't a good movie, and the 3D wasn't very interesting. There was one shot that actually shocked me, where they really pushed the 3D super hard to the point where it's like uncomfortable to look at, which is great. I think that pushing the 3D so it's uncomfortable to look at during a scene that's supposed to be like uncomfortable is a great idea, because you put the audience in the shoes of the characters. This movie is on Disney Plus right now, so I'm going to go ahead and say what it is. But when the characters fly out of the turtle and they see the turtle's eye and the camera goes back, and you can still see like the volume on the little spaceship, and it's like, you know, there in front of the massive eye, and it's just going back and back, and the 3D is just really extreme in that shot. And I was really surprised that they pushed the 3D as much as they did for that moment. It really, I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot I was watching a 3D movie. Like, wow. And it's crazy because I usually don't watch movies at the theater that I work at, mainly because we don't have IMAX, we don't have 4DX. But I saw this at our theater, and the projection is like really clean. Like, our projection in that theater is super sharp. So it's not the projector's issue. There was a trailer for The Little Mermaid remake before this movie, and the 3D in that trailer absolutely wowed me. I think, even though the movie will probably not be any good, I think the 3D in that movie is going to be very, very excellent, just from what little I've seen, where the composition of the shots and just the depth in it is just really, really good. I can specifically think of a shot. Actually, let me look it up. I know we're supposed to be talking about Strange World. This movie's bad. The 3D was bad. Don't worry about it. It had one cool shot, and that's basically it. Let me look up The Little Mermaid. Little Mermaid, here it is. I wish I could find this trailer in 3D because it was so cool. Wait for it. This stuff was really deep. All these shots were really deep. This one right here. This one right here. Every time I walk into a screening and I see this trailer or this shot with the tail, and the tail is very clearly out of the screen, like, it's really good pop out. It just blows me away how good the 3D looks in this. And it makes me sad because this movie isn't going to be any good. And I'm not going to want to watch it more than once. Maybe it will be good. Maybe I'll be surprised. Look how Strange World is so bad, I started talking about a trailer for another movie. We're going to move on from this one. We're going to be talking about the big one. Avatar: The Way of Water. I don't think that it is any surprise that I thought the 3D in this movie was absolutely astounding. When I first saw the trailer for this movie, that was like half the video for Doctor Strange. was me talking about the trailer for this movie. And I liked it so much that I ended up making a video specifically about the trailer. That's how good the 3D was. And I saw that and I was like, I can't even imagine how insane the 3D in the full movie is going to look. Like, just these random trailer shots alone have floored me. Let me see if I can find it. Oh no, I don't want Showtimes. The amount of dimensionality in this movie, the amount of depth and volume in this movie absolutely steamrolls any 3D movie I've ever seen. And the fact that he was able to make this movie a comfortable 3D viewing experience, you don't get any eye fatigue for 3 hours with the amount of volume and depth that this movie has. It's black magic. This dude had to have made, James Cameron had to have made a deal with the devil to get the 3D this good and this comfortable and this just absolutely mind-blowing. And the most spectacular thing about it is that the 3D doesn't get in the way. It feels so well integrated with this world that you don't think about it, yet at the same time, the 3D is still wowing you. The stuff, the underwater shots, which is a lot of this movie, when you have objects underwater, they're more or less flying. So you're able to do a lot of interesting 3D stuff with that. And you're able to bring things out of the screen that... Let me find the teaser trailer, actually, for this movie. Because the teaser trailer is... what I really want to be talking about. The stuff with the fish and everything feels natural. Everything feels so natural and flowing. Stuff comes in and out of the screen and it doesn't make a big point of it. It just works. And I think the high frame rate also probably helped a lot with that. The arrows, stuff points out of the screen. This thing floats, swims out of the screen. The high frame rate, which allows for the camera to move and zoom and dolly and like pan without losing any of the 3D quality, helped out a lot. While I wouldn't say that high frame rate would be my go-to, when it's used in the context of allowing the 3D image to breathe, it is absolutely imperative. It helps keep things consistent. And this movie also being shot in 3D, I just have no idea how he did it. Like, it shouldn't even have been possible. He somehow managed to reinvent 3D and hit a bar that, with not just the visual effects, but the presentation itself, that I don't even know how they're gonna top it. I don't even know where to go next from here. This is like the ultimate, this is how you do 3D. This is how you do visual effects. And every filmmaker that is going to work on a 3D movie or wants to make a movie with 3D in mind needs to watch this movie and understand why the 3D works and use that to help integrate it into their film. The 3D in this movie is more for the experience of watching the movie and being on Pandora, rather than I guess you could say it's a storytelling thing as well, but it's less trying to be part of the story and more being a part of the experience of watching it. 3D helps integrate live action and CG elements together a lot better. So things where you have this character, his name is Spider, running around with the Na'vi, or the Na'vi running around on, actual real sets with the motion capture, integrates things together a lot better, a lot more than if it was just done in regular 2D. I mean, the compositing is well done, but the 3D adds an extra layer that tricks your mind into believing what you're seeing is real. Because we know how things look in 3D, because we see it all the time. We understand the world and how everything has a presence. And when we see that replicated on the screen, even if it's a computer-generated object and it's not really there when they shot the scene, because it has the correct dimensionality, there is a part of our brain that says this object is actually there. It has to be there because this is how it would look if I really saw it with my own eyes. And this movie, it absolutely grabs that and runs with it. This is just how 3D movies... I don't think every movie needs to have 3D as extreme as this one does, but this is what should be the base for 3D movies. This should be the base that you look at and you say, okay, we want to take these elements from it and we want to use the 3D in this way. It should be something that pulls you into the experience. It should be something that integrates the movie with the audience. It should be something that integrates the audience with the movie. It should be something that you both acknowledge is there and also forget is there. It just works so well. And I was really excited because we had 12 years of experience from the original Avatar, which set the 3D bar really high. All that experience, all the lessons that had been learned over the years, all the teething troubles through 3D, all of it had been learned. And I was like, what is James Cameron going to do with all that information? He's going to look down at the book of 3D and he's going to see where things succeeded and where things failed. Look at him raise the bar again. And this movie absolutely smashed the 3D record and knocked it out of the park. And I'm just absolutely blown away. I hope this gets a 3D Blu-ray release. I will absolutely buy it. And that's what I gotta say about the 3D and the visuals for this movie. And I think it's better than the original Avatar. I don't really like the original Avatar all that much, but this one is better. Now, do I think that 75% of screenings should have been required to be in 3D? No. I think at most 50%. I think 75% was overkill. I understand that a lot of audiences have fallen out of love with 3D, and James Cameron really kind of wanted to force people to see 3D so they could understand that 3D has gotten a lot better since those early conversions back in the early 2010s. But I think forcing people to see this movie in 3D was a bit overkill. I think that may have made people hate 3D more because people want to be able to choose. When the first Avatar came out, most of those screenings were not in 3D. That was like an extra cherry on top. That was like a new technology that was still budding. And when the few people that did see it in 3D said that 3D was really good, 3D was still a new thing, new shiny thing at the time. And people hadn't been soured on it because it was a special thing. And that's why the 3D was so well regarded for Avatar. Because people were allowed to choose to see it. Here, it's like you more or less gotta see it in 3D. I'm glad that people I'm glad that people who haven't given 3D a chance in a decade are seeing 3D again for what it is now, which is really good. Even all the other movies I talked about this year where I was like the 3D wasn't really interesting, the conversion jobs themselves were well done. Even if they aren't necessarily at the top of the list to watch in 3D. Man, I really went on a tirade. The swimming scenes were incredible in 3D, but the 4DX made it all better. I have not watched this in 4DX yet. Anyway, that is my Avatar monologue. Absolutely astounding. Hats off to James Cameron. He not only met my expectations, but he still blew me away. I saw this in IMAX 3D high frame rate absolutely the way to see this movie, and I hope that we see a new interest in 3D filmmaking after this has come out, because it has just absolutely shown people the power of 3D and what it can do, and what the power of filmmaking can do given to someone who is really passionate and has enough pull because all of his movies are box office successes. And so from Avatar 2, we wrap things up with a movie that actually really surprised me. One that I was looking forward to, but did not expect to hit as hard as it did. Puss in Boots. This movie is very good. I would very much recommend Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I think the 3D was well done. It's a DreamWorks movie, so the 3D is always a treat. But they do lots of fun 3D moments. The action sequences in this movie are well choreographed, and the 3D is really pushed in those, so it exaggerates or it heightens the intensity of the action sequences when the 3D is like all crazy. They have Puss pointing his sword towards the screen, and the sword comes out of the screen. Shots like this where he's coming towards the screen. They didn't forget about the 3D in this movie, and I think it's pretty well integrated into it. And it really adds to the intensity of the action sequences. It adds to the intensity of the story. This movie was a very surprising movie. They did a lot of stuff that I didn't expect. There was like swearing in it. There was swearing in it. There was a lot of really dark themes. Characters bleed, like actual blood. There's a lot of... This movie makes you confront your own mortality. And even after Puss defeats the big bad wolf at the end, it's this guy right here, who's one of the most terrifying, coolest DreamWorks villains ever made. Every time this guy was on screen, it sends chills down your spine. Like, they set up early on that this guy is as real as it gets, and it does not relent for the entire movie. And just when you think he couldn't get more intense, the movie ramps it up to 11, and it's just like, yeah, you thought this guy was intense before? Nah, this guy's insane. Shots like this where it runs really fast and the pointing at the screen. The action sequences, when they do the speed lines, the 3D is just like really... It's really exaggerated. It really pushes the intensity of it. It's a well integrated 3D experience. And this isn't going to get a 3D Blu-ray release, but I am glad that I got to see it when I did. I saw this movie twice. I saw it, and then the day after I saw it again, both times in 3D. And even now, I'll sit down and I'll watch it when I'm cleaning theaters. It was a good movie to end the year on, honestly. And I know there's a lot of cool movies coming out this year that are going to be in 3D. But I think 2022 was a pretty good year for 3D movies. We had some mixed bags. We had some good ones. We had some bad ones. But there it is, man. From the bad guys to Puss in Boots. It's poetic, isn't it? We started off with the DreamWorks movie, and we ended with the DreamWorks movie. It's like a bookend to the year. And DreamWorks just brought it all together. So, best 3D movies this year. Doctor Strange. Brashmastra. Avatar. Jaws. Avatar 2. Puss in Boots. I thought the 3D was well done in that. Are they re-releasing? Oh, they are re-releasing Titanic in 3D, aren't they? Hold up, let me pull that up. I do have this in 3D Blu-ray. The 3D in this movie is really, really good. But when is it getting released? Valentine's Day 2023. High frame rate. I wonder, Disney releasing February 10th. Oh no, Paramount. No! Paramount's gonna do a shitty re-release. I wonder when tickets for that are gonna go on sale. I want a 2D HD for please. The 3D ruined the movie in the 2012 release. I disagree. I thought 3D in Titanic was actually extremely well done. I would still say Jurassic Park is the better legacy release. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. That's all the movies from this year. I appreciate you guys showing up. It's been a crazy year, and hopefully next year is even better. I'm still working on the Trees 3D video. I actually only have to record 1 more hour of footage and then it will be ready to go, but it's dark now, so I can't really do that. But that will be out when I can get it out, and you can probably... anything could happen. I could just do a regular 3D reviews, but you can expect the first 3D reviews to probably be Ant-Man and the Wasp, unless Titanic comes out before that. I don't know. Or Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. But that being said, thank you guys for showing up, and I'm going to end it at that.